Hello, good evening. I hope you can see the screen. Hello, I hope you can see the screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good evening. Let's wait for 2 more minutes and then we will start.
What, ma'am?
We will wait for 2 more minutes and then we will start. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Sure.
Okay. Let's start. Achha. So we will discuss uh, investment saving and liquidity of money. Okay. So what are the effects? So there are two factors I mentioned which affect investment saving curve. What are they? And that depends on what? On the steepness. Okay. So here it depends on two things. What are the things? First, interest elasticity of investment. This is one. And next is MPS. MPS is what? Slope of saving curve. Okay. So here, what is interest elasticity means? Interest elasticity of investment is high with a small drop in R, which will lead to a large increase in L. Okay. First, let us draw the diagram, then we can understand it more better. Okay. So first, it will be a combination of investment plus government spending. Okay. And here we have interest rate. R I plus G. Okay. So here R2, then you have this. Again, so here we have E1. So that is R1. And next for this, so this is I0 and this. So it will be I2 plus G, I1 plus G, and I0 plus G. Okay, this is one. We'll do three diagrams. This is I plus G, as you can understand. Now, S plus T function. We will draw now. So here, S plus T. So we draw the diagram. Here we have S y minus T plus T. Y minus T. Okay. So here first, from here, we get one line. And this is I2 plus G. That is S2 plus T. Okay. Next we have, this is E. We got an equilibrium. Next, again, we will be drawing one line. Okay, here it will be Y2, it will be Y1. So accordingly, it will be I1 plus G is equals to S1 plus T. Y0, so it will be correspondingly I0 plus G, that is S0 plus T. Okay, so here we have the equilibrium shifts to this, and here we have equilibrium for this. So E to E bar to this. Okay, so here we are having, now it is S plus T function. And next, C is the IS curve. So here we have, so E bar, okay. So here we have R1, R2, R0, okay. Y2, Y1, Y0. For the leveling, it's income. And here we have interest rate. Now, what is the explanation? So here, if you see the three diagrams, say if the interest rate, say of elasticity of investment is high, okay. So then with a small drop in R, you can see it will lead to a large increase in L, okay. So that is a correspondingly large increase in Y, that is to the investment multiplier. So this point is illustrated here. As you can see in A, when the investment demand curve, this is I of R and this is I of R plus G. So here it's steep I and a fall in R will lead to increase L only by a small amount. This is for one. Next, for B part, an increase in saving and hence income is needed to restore equilibrium in the commodity market. So what will happen? IS curve will pass here. It will be steeper. That I have drawn for your last. This is your IS. Okay. So thus from this what we can see, with increase in saving and income has to be much larger than in the first case. Okay. So in this case, the IS curve will be relatively flat. This is one. I started with this. Those who join now, like I told, there are some factors which determine the slope of the IS curve. Correct? So now here, two things are there, like the relative effectiveness of stabilization policy. Those are monetary policy and fiscal policy. Now the steepness of the IS curve, it depends on two things. One is interest elasticity of investment, which was the thing we did first, and on the slope of shape curve, slope of saving curve. So there we go it for. What is that? There also a diagram is there. I will draw the diagram first. Okay, first understand this. The slope of the IS curve, it depends on saving function, correct? So whose slope is what? MPS, marginal propensity to save. So the higher this MPS is, the steeper will be the IS curve. Okay. So say for a given fall in interest rate, what happens? The amount by which income would have to be increased to restore equilibrium in the product market. Okay, that is smaller. Okay, so the higher the increase, marginal propensity to save. Okay, so if MPS suppose is relatively high, if MPS is relatively high, then a small increase in income is necessary to generate the new saving. Okay, required to support new investment, which will be caused by what? By a fall in the rate of interest. So if MPS were low. Okay. Now factors which shift the IS curve. So to analyze the cause and effect of the shift of the IS curve, what we have to do? We have to incorporate government expenditure and tax in our analysis. Okay. So here the IS curve will shift if any or all of the components. Say the equation, if I write, then it will be I of R plus G is S Y minus T plus T. Okay. First, let me draw the diagram. So here, first investment plus government spending. First this diagram. So here I plus G. So here I of R plus G not I of R plus G1. Okay. So here we give and it shifts. So as the rate changes, so R naught, R1. So here it changes. So that is I naught plus G naught, I1 plus G1. This I plus G, it is 0. Okay. This is investment plus government spend. And what we need also here, that is saving plus tax. So that is S Y minus T naught That is, so it will be having I, so that's I naught plus G naught, that will be S naught plus T naught. Okay, I naught plus G1, that is S1 plus T naught. So here E bar, and it will be E. So that is Y naught, Y1. Okay, and this is Y, this is S plus T. Okay, this is the saving plus tax. Now I square. So here IS naught, IS, why it shifts? To do with the diagram, this shift is what will be shown. So here R naught, R1. So here E, it's bar. So here we have del G 1 by 1 minus. So it's IS naught, it's Y naught to Y. This actually rightward shift in total, what we mean by of the IS curve. Why? As I stated, with an increase in government spending. Okay. So here we will understand uh, previously the diagram which we did, what it showed. It showed the derivation of IS curve in three sector model, correct, including the government. I plus G1 diagram I did. So equilibrium in the good market required the saving plus tax, which is shown. Okay. Now S1 plus T, I told S1 plus T, that is I1 plus G. At the income level, what? At the income level, Y1. So the combination R1, Y1 is 1 point. Okay. Along the IS curve. So similarly, interest rate R0 will require income level Y0 for equilibrium in the product market. Okay. So this diagram we're talking about. You're not understanding this one. The last one which we did. Okay. This. Okay. So by proceeding this way, we derive the IS curve, which is a locus of all the combinations. Okay. Now here, as it moves, here we can see that an increase in MEC caused by a favorable shift in expectations about the future. Let me write it down. For this diagram, as you can see, an increase in MEC caused by a favorable shift in expectation about the future profitability of investment projects. Okay, it increases what? Investment demand. Okay, so now which is corresponding to what? Each interest rate. Okay, so as a result, IR curve shifts to the right. Okay, so hence the combined I plus G curve shifts to the right. Okay, like you can see the rightward shift of the IR. This one diagram I'm talking about. This diagram. Shiftward. Okay. So each type of change, see an increase in I or J, it will shift the I plus G. Anything it can be. Okay. And it will be to the right, obviously. And what? By the expenditure multiplied 1 by 1 minus B times. Okay. Times the increase in G or I. Okay. So see, let me tell you, change in government spending. Take a small note here. So say if the government spending increases to G, okay, then what happens? The combined investment plus government spending shifts, correct? Say I naught plus G naught to I naught plus G, correct? That will happen. So at a fixed interest rate, R naught will always remain unchanged, okay? And I naught plus G, this is greater than I naught, obviously it is increasing. So del G will be G1. Now G1 minus G naught, the change. So in order to maintain this equilibrium, say with a fixed level of tax which is there, it might be, then what to do? So in order to maintain this equilibrium with a fixed level of tax, saving has to rise from S0 to S1, okay, which requires income to rise from Y0 to Y1, okay. At interest rate R naught, the equilibrium point again shifts from E to E naught. Obviously, if the G changes, then the equilibrium will also shift. So, an increase in G shifts the IS curve also. So, the IS curve shift by, in this case, with the horizontal thing. This what I am telling you. This I am telling you changes in government spending before explaining you the direct diagram. Okay. So this is the thing. Okay. So now the IS curve shift by a horizontal distance to E bar. See the shift. There is a shift. Okay. Say E to E bar. Correct. So what happens? As a result, when G increases by what? Del G. Okay. So here the horizontal shift of the IS, this distance is the amount of the increase in income required to generate what? The new saving equal to increase in government spending. Okay. So now here, if you see, since the increased saving in MPS times del Y, so the required increase in del Y, it will be the horizontal shift of the IS curve. That will be what? Del G is equals to del S. That is equals to 1 minus B del Y. Okay. So the amount of such shift of the IS curve per unit increase in G will be 1 by 1 minus B. Okay. So the autonomous expenditure multiplier. Then E bar, what I mean by that, that is del Y. So that is Y1 minus Y0. So that is del G. I told you the multiplier. Okay. So here R and therefore I remaining constant. Okay. So here the multiplier effect is present. Why? Due to the induced increase in consumption. Correct? Which is caused by rising government spending. So this is one. Okay. With the autonomous change in investment also, then what will happen? An increase in, suppose there is an increase in MEC. Okay. So then what will happen? It will cause by a favorable shift in expectation about the future. So here, as a result, the IR curve will also shift to the right. So this combined I plus G curve shifts to the right. Okay. So here, this rightward shift of the IR curve by the amount of the autonomous increase in investment has exactly the same effect on the S curve. So each type of change shifts the I plus G curve and in turn shifts the IS curve to the right. Okay. So the autonomous expenditure multiplier, that is 1 by 1 minus B times the increase in G. Okay. Now, if I talk about change in tax, so here tax are leakages from the circular flow of income. So if there is an increase in tax, it will shift what? It will shift S plus T schedule to the left. As you can see, in the second diagram, which I have drawn for you, this one. Okay. So here, at the same interest rate R naught, what happens? Which fixes I naught. So here, saving plus. So I naught plus G naught. This one is the diagram. They changes. So here, income must fall to maintain this equilibrium condition, as we can see here. Okay, this one. So in equilibrium condition, I plus G is equal to S plus T. Okay, and after the tax increase, income falls from where? From Y naught to Y1. So that we see from point E. Okay, so here, to ensure product market equilibrium at the original interest rate, that is R naught, the original interest rate. Okay. Now, if I talk about this magnitude, we have done graphically, we have understand the explanation. Now, if we have to know the magnitude of the shift, then magnitude of the shift. So that can be done mathematically. In the case, magnitude of the shift of the IS curve will be what? That will be equals to tax multiplier times the increase in tax total. Okay, that is dead. So now, see, since saving plus tax remain unchanged, two-sector model we have done initial. So for new equilibrium to occur at the same rate of interest, say the increase in tax has to be exactly offset by a fall in saving. What I mean, 0 is equal to del S plus del T. Okay. Now in this case, the change in saving is what? In this case, del S is 1 minus B del Y minus T. That is 1 minus B del Y minus 1 minus B change in T. Okay. So here the equilibrium condition I of R plus G is equal to S of Y minus T plus T. Okay. To hold requires that del S plus del Y is 0. Correct. So now 1 minus B del Y minus 1 minus B del T plus del T is equals to 0. So here 1 minus B del Y minus del T plus B del T plus del T is equal to 0. So 1 minus B del Y plus B del T is equals to 0. So 1 minus B del Y is equal to minus B del T. So del Y is minus B by 1 minus B del T, with R remaining constant at what? R naught. Okay, so thus income has to fall for product market equilibrium, and that is at R naught with a high level of tax. But the magnitude of the leftward shift of the IS curve for 1 unit increase is what? Minus B by 1 minus B, which is what? Which is the tax multiplier. Tax multiplier for what? For the escape. Simple Keynesian model, correct? So the tax multiplier indicates what? The horizontal shift of the IS curve per unit change in tax when the interest rate and the volume of investment remains fixed. So fiscal policy variables affect the position of the IS curve, but changes in G or T do not alter the slope. This is one. Now next we will do for loanable funds. What are loanable funds? Loanable funds. Okay. And this is interpretation for of the IS curve. Okay, so here um, it is possible to suggest an alternative interpretation of the IS curve, by referring to a dual role, okay, of the rate of interest in the circular flow of money. That is, the interest rate affects the supply of and demand for goods and services. Okay. So here it also affects the supply of and demand for loanable funds. So how we get the equilibrium? So equilibrium in the product market. So what we are having? Say the product market or the market for goods and service will be in equilibrium when it will be C plus I plus G. Okay. So what is C? C is equal to C y minus T. I of R. Okay. G bar. Okay. T is T bar. What this equation represents? The demand side of the economy. Okay, where the demand for economy's output comes from CIG. And each component of aggregate demand has its own determinants. Now, the supply side of the economy is represented by the aggregate production function. That is Y is equal to function of K bar L bar. Okay, so that is Y bar. Correct. Now, since the factors of production are assumed to remain constant, then the quantity of output produced will also be at its potential level. C by then substituting the consumption function and the investment function in the again national identity, then we get Y is equal to CY minus T plus I of R plus G. Okay, so since the variables G and T are exogenously determined, the factor of production is also, the production function determine the quantity of output which is supplied to the economy. So Y is equal to C Y bar minus T bar. Okay, plus I of R plus G. Okay, so here the supply of output is equal to T. So in this equation, only R remains undetermined. Correct. So why? Because it must adjust to ensure that the demand for goods equal its supply. So the higher is R, the higher the volume of R. Okay, and the lower the demand for goods and service. So if R is very high, say if R is very high, then I is too low. So then the demand for output falls short of the supply. So C plus I plus G is less than Y bar. Okay. And the converse is also true. So if R is too low, then I is too high. So then C plus I plus G will be greater than Y bar. And at equilibrium R, what is happening? C plus I plus G is equal to Y bar. So in order to get a clear picture, to balance the supply, we have now to consider the equilibrium in the financial market. How will we do it? Yeah. So the financial market reaches the equilibrium when the supply and demand for the loanable funds are in balance. So in the context of this financial market in which R is both the cost of borrowing and return to lending, we can now present the national income identity as Y minus C minus G is equals to I. So this term Y minus C minus G is saving because S is equals to I, correct? So national saving has two components. What are the two components? National saving has two components. What are the two components? Private saving and government saving. Okay. So here S is equal to Y minus I minus C plus T minus G, that is equals to I. Okay. So the inflow into this financial market must balance the outflow from the financial market. So by substituting, we get C Y minus C and I of R. So we get, we put this and we get the value Y minus C minus G is equal to I of, okay, or what we can say, supply of loanable funds is equal to demand for loanable. Okay, so here G is equal to G bar, so T is equal to T bar, so Y is equal to Y bar. Okay, by fixed factors of production. Okay, and so the production function we get Y bar minus C bar, Y bar minus T bar minus G bar is equal to I of R. So S bar is equals to I of R. So here S bar depends on what? Y, G and T. Y, G and T. Okay. So since all the three variables have fixed value, S also remains fixed and does not depend on R. But I is a function of what? It's a function of R. So I varies inversely. We do a diagram, we understand better. So here we have R. This is our diagram. So this is I of R. This is S. This is IS. Okay. So R equilibrium and this is S bar. Okay. And this is the equilibrium. So what is the interpretation here? This is basically the interest rate determination by fixed saving and investment. So what do we mean by that? Say S is interpreted what? Supply of loanable fund. And I is what? Demand for loanable fund. So the equilibrium rate of interest R of E is determined where? As you can see by the diagram, it is determined at the intersection. At the intersection of what? Saving investment process. Okay. So at this rate, the household desire to save balance, the firm desire to invest, and the quantity of loanable funds demanded. So that is equal to the quantity supplied. So if investment is greater than R, see the diagram. If investment is greater than R, then what will happen? Obviously, R will rise. And on the other hand, if investment is less than R, S, then R will fall. Okay. So both from National Income Accounting System and from the SKM, we find an equivalence between this. So the derived of the IS curve will be, that is, when income rises, say from Y1 to Y2. Okay. Say if we have a diagram like, we have to draw it side by side. This is equilibrium in the market for loanable funds, the IS curve. Excuse me. So here, say receiving Y1, Y2. Okay. So here we have I of R. So here R1 and this R2. Okay. And the curve will move. So we can see, okay, I will explain once. Let me finish with the diagram. E to write it here. Okay, this is S. This is one. And next diagram, the IS curve, we get the determined from here. So here we get this will be a straight one. This will be obviously we will be getting from here. So this one. Similarly for this one and IS curve, we get the line. Finally, we derive it. So here y1 y. This curve is this side. Okay. So here R naught. Okay, same leveling we have to do. So R1 bar F bar. Okay. So here now coming to your interpretation, what we mean by this is that same income rises from Y1 to Y2. Okay. So then national saving will what happen? Y minus C minus G, correct. So it increases but by less than Y, but by less than Y. Why? Since MPS is less than Y, okay. So here from this figure, it shows that the increased supply of the loanable funds, it pushes the interest rate from R1 to R2. As you can see the shift R1 to R2. So as a result, what will happen? Investment as your interest rate. So investment and income will increase. So here from the figure, from the next figure, as you can see that an increase in income implies a low equilibrium rate of interest. Now, due to this inverse relationship of R and Y, what happens? I slopes down. Okay. So here in this case, if there is a change in fiscal policy, that will also eventually shift the IS curve. And if my G increases or T falls, then S will also fall. So S will be Y bar minus C, Y minus T minus G, that will be I. So a cut in T will increase C and will reduce Y bar minus C minus G. So this consequent fall in supply of loanable funds raises R and equilibrates the market for loanable fund. Now, since your R is now higher, say at a fixed level of Y, then the IS curve shifts upward in response to expansionary fiscal policy. We have to factor in. So, which works to what? An increase in G or a cut in T or both at the same time. Okay. So, this is the IS is a relationship what we see for Y and R. What we do. Okay. This is for your IS curve. Now, I will start with LM curve. What we have for LM curve? So, the Keynesian demand function for money is expressed as what? That is L, Y, comma R. Okay. Means or linear form, how we can write? C0 plus C1y minus C2r. Okay. So C1 is greater than 0 or C2 is greater than 0. So here C naught is what? It is the intercept of the money demand function. Okay, this is C naught. And what is C1? Increase in money demand. Okay. So here C2 is what? Fall in money demand per unit. Okay. So you can see the transaction demand for money in the Keynesian model. What it assumes, it depends positively on income and Speculative demand inversely on the rate of interest. So the money market is in equilibrium when the demand for money indicated by the symbol L is equal to the fixed. That is, money demand is equal to money supply. So that is C naught plus C1y minus C2r. So now in order to derive the LM curve, which shows, money market equilibrium, what we have to do? So to find the combination of R and Y. Okay. That fixed or equates money demand with a fixed money supply. So the LM curve is a locus of point showing all the combinations of RY. So here for LM curve, the diagram goes for LM curve. So here it will be white. Okay. And it's E, and it's EY. Okay. So now here we have R1 and here we have R0. And here we have what? Interest rate. Here we have quantity of money. Okay. So this is one. R0. Okay. So here we have the LM curve, and for the same we get here E bar, and it's this. So it's R0, R1, and R2. It's Y0, Y1, Y. Same way. Here we have income, and here we have interest rate. Okay. So from this diagram, see how the LM curve is derived. We understand from this. So part A is showing, see, with the increase in income, say from Y0 to Y1 to Y2, it shifts the demand curve for money from MDY0 to MDY1. Okay. Then to MDY2. So in order to restore the equilibrium, the rate of interest has to rise from R0 to R1 to R2. When? As income increases from Y0 to Y1 to Y2. Okay. In the part B, if you see, we derive the LM curve how? By connecting points like E, E0. The 3 points we connected, which shows the combinations of what? The combinations of income and interest rate. Okay. So that which equilibrates the money market. Okay. So here, these points are nothing. The point E bar, and this, they show equilibrium combinations. Okay. For what? For R0, Y0, for R1, Y1, and for R2, Y2. Okay. In higher interest rate because they are required for money market equilibrium. That's why the LM curve is upward sloping from left to right, as you can see. Okay. So in part A, if you see the part segment A, that there, when the money market is in equilibrium, then at point E, money demand will be equals to money supply. Okay. And part B is showing money market equilibrium with Y equal to Y0, R equal to R. Okay. So if I give you the explanation, as income increases from Y0, see the diagram. As the income increases from Y0 to Y1 to Y2, the demand for money increases, and you can see the demand curve for money shift what? Parallelly. They are shifting on parallel. As a result, what happens? The rate of interest also rises from R0 to R1 and from R1 to R2 and the equilibrium points. So these 3 points of money market equilibrium corresponds with this, which lie on the LM curve. So this shows the combination of what? Y and R. Okay. So that is Y naught and R naught, Y1 and R1, Y2 and R2. So we see that LM curve is a locus of point which shows the alternative combination of Y and R that brings about money market equilibrium. So the LM curve is upward sloping from left to right because as the level of income rises, higher interest rates are required to re-achieve the money market equilibrium. Now what we have to do? We have to know two things about LM curve. Again, just like the same like I curve, that how and what it determines the steepness of the curve. Why? Because the slope of the curve determines the effectiveness. And we have to know which factors shift the LM curve. Okay, so let's start with we must know what determines the steepness or flatness of the curve. Why? Because the slope of the curve determines the effectiveness. Of stabilization policies. Okay. And second, we have to know which factors shift the LM curve. Okay. So first, factors determining the slope of the curve. So the steepness or flatness of the LM curve depends on what? On the interest elasticity of demand. So it depends on the interest elasticity of demand. Okay. So now if the demand for money says interest inelastic, then what will happen? Then the LM curve will fairly be steep. Okay. And if it is fairly elastic, then LM curve will be relatively flat. So see, the higher the value of C1, the steeper will be the, I will do the diagram for you, the LM curve. Okay. So the reason is what? The higher the value of C1, the larger, because the larger the increase in money. Okay. That is also per unit increase in income. Okay. And hence what will happen? Larger is the upward adjustment in the interest rate. Okay. Which is required to restore money market. So higher is C1, steeper will be the LM curve. And say if the money demand is highly interest elastic. If money demand is highly interest elastic. Okay. Then C2 is large. So here, relatively, if there is a small increase also, if small increase in interest rate shown, then it will offset the increase in transaction demand for money. Okay, which is caused by a rise in income. That is from Y0 to Y1 to Y2. From Y0 to Y1 to Y2. When if C1, that is which shows the C1 shows what? Increase in, doing the diagram for you, M per unit. Okay, that is the diagram goes like M and this is R. So here we have not 0. This is MDY1. This is MDY2. Okay. Okay. So here, and you have another more diagram. That is, so from this you determine here, this is your LM curve, correct? So R0, R1, R2, and this one is E naught. Okay. So here we get the Y, Y1. Okay. This is low interest elasticity of money demand. Okay. Like the interest elasticity of demand, if it is low, then this is why the demand curve for money is relatively steep, as you can see. Okay. And the LM curve is also. Then vice versa, high interest elasticity for money demand, that also you are having a diagram, and that also is. Okay. So for today, we stop it here, and then again we will continue next day. If anyone is having any question, you can ask me. Any question? Okay. Thank you then.